well, I assume it, unless you were there last night. But we have Jared Margolis with us, who was there last night at the Fan Forum to fill us in on everything that was said. Jared, how are you doing, my friend?
Yes, very well. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. So on the basis of it, how was it last night? Was it a good evening? Did you have a good time?
Yeah, really good. Something I've wanted to go to for a little while, and got the opportunity to go last night. Really good. Quite different to what I expected, if I'm honest.
So what were you expecting, and what did you actually experience?
So I went there thinking it's a lot more scripted, and whilst there are pre-questions, I forget the gentleman's name who ran it. There were some pre-questions, and he was very good.
Nihal, I think his name.
Yeah, he was a Spurs fan. Yeah, he's great. But it was a very different in terms of the individuals that were there, how they spoke. They were quite relaxed. Postecoglou was. He's absolutely amazing to sit and listen to. I was very fixated on how he was speaking. Son is Son. What a legend! Absolutely brilliant. Beth England speaks so well, and the amazing stuff she's doing, with the women's team, which is amazing. And obviously, the manager. So there was a lot of talk around the growth and what's happening in that game and the club. We should be super proud of that. You also had Johan Lang there, who again talked a lot about. I didn't realize he was going to be on stage, but he was there. He spoke a lot about our recruitment, what it looks like, how we do it, and it's not as simple as perhaps we might think. And then there was the big boss, big Mr. Levy, who took some questions. Didn't hear a great deal from him, if I'm honest, but that might just be the questions and how they were presented.
Was in terms of the questions, were they pre-planned in the sense that Niall would say, okay, we're going to have this person ask a question now, or was it like an open floor, anyone could ask a question?
So as part of the invite, there was a link which allowed you to submit a few questions. So then what he did is he had some pre-questions that they would have, they selected to ask the panel, and they kind of went, Joe Bloggs, do you want to stand up? And then he didn't ask a question, they asked it on his behalf. So we probably had 6 or 7 of those, and elaborated, I guess, with some of the guests. And then towards the end, you kind of opened it up to put your hand up, which it wasn't a huge amount. That was probably in about 20 minutes. I think we could have done with a bit more time, I think, for those questions.
I guess we can go through the kind of comments that we know about, and then you can tell us anything that hasn't been publicized. And I'm talking about particularly the questions that were put to Daniel Levy, and about criticism that comes his way, and about his 3 best achievements, or his 3 top achievements as chairman so far. And obviously he said the 3 top achievements are getting to the Champions League final, opening the new stadium, and the fantastic players that the club has had, but no mention of the actual trophy that he has won back in 2008 against Chelsea, which I found quite strange, seeing as that is the only trophy he's won. Were you surprised by that? I mean, what was your reaction to him not even mentioning the trophy that we won? I know a lot of people were upset about that on social media.
Yeah, he obviously talked about getting the Champions League, which I understand the achievement. I listened and almost wanted to say, well, we didn't win it, we didn't turn up. So yeah, it kind of is what it is. I appreciate we got there. What about the stadium? Absolutely. We're all super proud of that, and about the players. But no, you're right. There was, in his time, we've won that 1 trophy, and you're right. There was no mention of it. The room was fairly quiet when he said those. I'm honest.
And then he said that he's got a very thick skin, and he just ignores the criticism and makes me want to be more successful. I hope he means more successful on the pitch as opposed to off it.
Yeah, that question almost came from, there was a question around, is Spurs looked at more as almost a business entertainment with the NFL, with the concerts and all the stuff we do in the stadium, and are we coming away from being a football club? And he answered that, and I get his answer. He almost went, all of that is revenue that I want to take and then use for the team. And he then almost followed up by saying, and I won't apologize for that. So I understand, but he was very assertive as to why he does it, where that money goes, and he's aware of the criticism, but won't apologize because of how he does it.
It's a weird thing though to say. I understand like abuse and stuff. I agree, like he shouldn't listen to that. But in terms of like genuine criticism, to say he wouldn't listen to it is not a very good thing for a leader to do, I would say. I think criticism should be listened to and should be taken on board and maybe even addressed in certain circumstances. But the fact he brushes off criticism as if it's just stuff he shouldn't have to listen to.
But to be fair, he might say that in an open forum, but I think we all know that when criticism comes his way, he does sometimes like renege on his decisions.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, depending, like for example, like furlough and stuff like that, it's happened a few times. But I feel like, especially when you're, a custodian of the football club, which has been, running since 1882, and the fans have been around a lot longer than he has with this football club. Like when we do have genuine constructive criticisms, I should say, I think a lot of the times they should be addressed. They shouldn't just be ignored.
Yeah, I totally agree. But Jared, was there anything else that came from Levy that we should all know about?
No, I mean he talked very much around wanting our Tottenham back. We've a bit of what we had the year before. There was bits around what's the best piece of advice everyone's been given. We kind of went around the panel, and his response, if I'm correct, was to almost never give up. To keep going, to keep working harder, to make it even more successful. He jumped in between a few questions when things came on around things like Brennan Johnson, what the club do to support things around how do we use the ground more for the women's game. So there was a few things that darted around, but actually it wasn't a huge amount. I was a bit surprised that there was a lot of questions went to Ange and a lot went to both Beth and Son, but not a huge amount to him. He dipped in on the back of some of the questions to the others, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And moving on to Ange Postecoglou, he was asked about, is it time to show more pragmatism in games? Teams that win trophies have solid defences as well as attacks. And he says, you're spot on, mate, but that won't be us. As much as we want success, there is a Spurs way, and I won't deviate from that. I mean, yes, there's a Spurs way, but I kind of do feel like from those comments, it's just like saying, you know what, the defence is going to be the defence. We're going to concede goals, but hopefully we're going to score more goals than the opponents. I mean, that doesn't fill me with that much confidence moving forward. I don't know about you, Jared.
The gentleman asked that question was sitting in front of me, and it was a great question. And instantly, almost he didn't not take it on board, but he almost just went, "No, this is how we're going to play." And I guess I've had 24 hours to think about it, and what I've taken from listening to Ange is there's nothing. He's not arrogant. There's no arrogancy here. He just believes how he wants to play and how he wants us to play, and he will not change that. So the question was great, but he instantly went, no, this is how we're going to play. And I've thought about it a bit, the last few hours, and I was the same as you. I was kind of like, there's times where we need to just drop a bit. Let's get a bit more defensive. Let's be a bit more careful. But I also respect that he wants to play this way. And if it doesn't work, he takes responsibility, and there's no arrogancy. It's just what he wants to do. And I've almost sat today and gone, okay, I'm going to get behind you. Not that I wasn't before, but I'm going to accept that we'll have some tough games, but we'll get it right.
You look at it though, like let's say if we're trying to compare it to the Maurizio Pochettino team, where everyone wants to get back to those levels fighting at the top of the league. As much as we played some great attacking football under Maurizio Pochettino, he always valued a good defence. And over that 2-year period, we had the best defence in the league with Toby, Jan, Rose and Walker. And I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me that...
But we didn't sit back.
Huh?
It's not like we sat back.
I mean, no, we didn't sit back, and no one's asking Ange to sit back, but people are asking Ange to put a bit more focus on the defence.
But we had a very good defence in a similar way to how Ange is trying to have a good defence in terms of... I think, to be fair, the game has moved on quite a bit since obviously Poch was a Tottenham manager, so maybe you could argue the way Poch played isn't necessarily going to get the same results now as it did then. But the way Poch defended wasn't necessarily to go into a low block, and obviously we wanted to defend properly, but it was more often than not squeeze the opposition, force them to go long a lot of the time, and when they did go in behind, you had Laurie sweeping up, charging out. You had Carl Walker and Danny Rose with a lot of pace running back, and that is similar to what Ange is trying to do. He's trying to limit the opposition, and that's how we're going to defend, instead of giving when they have possession just dropping back.
But also, Poch had variations of ways of playing. He could switch up the formation. He could. He's not just married to one way of playing. I felt Poch had a few variations.
But he didn't have that until his third season.
True, that's also true. But how are you feeling from that, Jared? From what we just said, do you agree, or do you have any?
I mean, there's times where you want him to change and you want him to make it slightly. There was a great question towards the end, and I don't know if it'll be on or be edited out, and it kind of said everything. The gentleman said to him, "Ange, can we get some more defibrillators around the ground?" And everyone kind of asked why, and he turned and he said, the gentleman said, because when Vicario plays that ball out from the back to Romero, it's not good for any of us, and that almost summed it up a bit, and everyone laughed because we all knew, because we've all sat there, God, just put it into Rose Ed. And what Ange said was, he said, I guess this comes from his dad and how his dad, brought him up in terms of football. When he said, I want you on the edge of your seat, but I want you on the edge of the seat when we defend, and I want you on the edge of the seat when we attack. And that I guess I get what you're saying, and I don't disagree that sometimes we've got to just dig in, but he's just not going to do that. And he said that. He said, there was a point where he said, we're going to go after teams. And there was quite a bit around what the first few games have looked like and how we've not done that. And Brentford was probably an example of what we can do. And he almost said, this is how we're going to play, whether we're playing City or whether we're playing Brentford or Leicester.
I kind of question, like, let's say hypothetically we get to a cup final this year. Let's say the FA Cup final, we play a Man City or we play an Arsenal, and we're 1-0 up going into the final 5-10 minutes, and the other team, the opposition, are really putting it on us, and they're looking really dangerous. They're attacking. Do you reckon at that point will he make adjustments and drop deep and defend? Will he do that, or will he just keep going for the throat and leaving us open?
We haven't been in that kind of situation.
I know. I'm saying hypothetically, what do you think he'd do?
I actually don't think we're ever going to just be a low block. I think that at that point the players will probably take them upon themselves to be a bit more pragmatic, I would assume. But I think I remember, what game was it last season? There was a game where we were 1-0 up and going into the latter stages, and we kind of just kept attacking. I think on that occasion we ended up winning, and he was saying after the game that in his point of view, like, we are more likely to get a result if, when the opposition is trying to put us under pressure, if we can exploit the gaps that they're leaving rather than dropping into a low block, we're more likely to get the result.
And it's also easier for them to exploit the gaps that we're leaving.
Yeah, potentially. But he thinks it's more likely for us to exploit their gaps. And that's the game he's trying to play. We're trying to be one of the best teams in possession. So if teams want to go toe-to-toe on that front, we're going to be better off exploiting their gaps than they are ours. And that's, I guess, what he's trying to say.
Do you agree with it?
Do I agree with it? Do I agree with that? I mean, probably not necessarily, unless we become that good. It takes a very high level.
Yeah.
If you're a prime Barca, then I agree with it. But we're not prime Barca. So from that sense, no. But look, I'm happy to be proved wrong in terms of how good we can get. And at the moment, we're on the right track. So we'll have to wait and see. And yes, it might not win us the league right now, but could it get us back in the top four? I'm hoping so. And from that point of view, it's good. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you would think, just dig in, be compact at certain points, and that's how you can adapt to certain situations. But that's not what he wants to do.
Jared, was there anything else from Ange that we should know about?
Yeah, I mean, I think what was really interesting is there was quite a long conversation around Brennan Johnson and about the week he had. I guess that was asked initially to Sonny as captain. How do we deal with as a team? And I'll come back to Sonny in a second. Ange talked a lot about social media, how it works, and in terms of he's young, he's a super player, and I think we'd all agree. I agree. I think he's a super player. There's just a bit of, I guess, there's some inexperience there about that final ball and when to do things and what to make of it. But Ange talked a lot about the team and in terms of how we've come together with that particular situation. There was a couple of bits as well where he talked a lot about the Tottenham way and about how we want to play. And again, not to kind of go on, but I've taken away that he's so focused on getting us playing. And even Daniel said, I got Daniel. Like I know I'm calling him Daniel, Mr. Levy. I got the feeling that he's almost okay with us not losing games, but it taking a bit of time. This is a long-term project, and they seem to be on the right track. So there was lots around how we're going to play. We're going to get bums on seats and just give it time, because the football that we play at times is absolutely brilliant, but we're going to make mistakes and we will lose games, but I think we'll win a lot more than we lose.
That does seem to be the general gist of what Ange is saying in press conferences, and I think you can see it on the pitch as well. And look, I agree with you. I like the direction that Spurs are going in. I think that there is definitely scope to improve massively in what we're doing. We're not clinical enough in games, and even to a certain extent, in some games, we're not creating enough chances. But I think that also falls in line with the quality that we do have in the forward line. I still think we need better quality there. In terms of Brennan Johnson, I think he's had a brilliant week in terms of scoring in the last minute against Coventry, good performance against Brentford. But I don't think he's performed to the best of his capabilities so far this season. You've got Sonny, who I think is, our best player by far. I think he's unbelievable. And I think it's just taken in this game against Brentford to Ange to make that tweak and get him more on the inside, to make him more effective. I like Dom Solanke as well. But I still think that we need more additions there. I don't know how you feel about that, Jared.
Yeah, I mean, so Johan Lang talked a lot around the squad and what we'd done. And there was, if I remember, there was a question around the change in the squad. And he talked about, I think we'll all agree, the outgoings have been pretty incredible. We had a lot of players who we needed to move on. They've done their time, done their servants, your Dyers, your Hoybers, all of those chaps. And he almost said, wanted to bring the age down. And he looked at it and said, where you've got some defenders who are, or midfielders, say a Bentinck or a Basuma are slightly older, you're looking now at a Gray and a Bergvar who are a slightly younger profile who can play that. So they're trying to balance throughout the squad. There was, again, quite a lot of talk around Solanke, and whilst he wasn't everyone's first choice, there was Tony we were, rumoured about and so on and so forth. And said from day one, that's who he wanted. And they took the whole summer to get him, I guess, mainly around making sure he was the right fit, making sure he was the right person. Ange went and spoke to him. Does he fit the type of player he wants in the dressing room? And he used the word, and so did Johan, that they are aligned in what they want to do with the squad. And I think you're right, Ben. I'm the same. And I put my hand up and I wanted to ask this question, and I didn't get picked, and it probably wouldn't have gone done well. And I wanted to ask a question around, we seem to be shopping at Bournemouth and at Leicester and at Nottingham Forest for Maddison, Johnson and Solanke, who I'm sure are good players, but we're shopping at Primark. We're not shopping at Harrods for bigger type players. That's no disrespect to them. That's the kind of player we're shopping at. So therefore, is our expectation not as high as it should be because the type of player that we're attracting? That's my view.
Yeah. Well, didn't Daniel Levy say, I can't remember which question it was to answer to, but he said that he didn't force any players on Ange, and they're very much in alignment in terms of Ange wanted to bring in younger players, and that was kind of the target this summer. Did anyone expand on that at the forum?
No, I remember that he did. He said whatever player Ange wants, he almost said Ange gets, whether that's true or not. But the player that Ange had asked for, was a player that him and Johan went after, which was Dom Solanke, who I think will be an excellent addition to our squad.
That also means Werner and Odebear.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have too much problems with the signing of Odebear. What I have a problem with is the signing of Timo Werner. I thought it was just such a needless signing to make when, you know, we saw what he could do last season. And yeah, he was okay for some of the games that he did play, but I think he's been terrible every time he has played this season. And I feel like when you're trying to take your forward line onto the next level, like Ange said he wanted to do at the back end of last season, I just don't think Timo Werner's the guy. And I could potentially question Ange's judgment if Timo Werner is the guy who he thinks can take us onto the next level this season. What do you think about that, Jared? Are you a fan of Timo?
I'm not. When he came originally, same as you, I got so much stick from Chelsea fans saying, he'll always be offside and he's going to miss a lot of chances. I understood why we did it last season. I didn't expect to do it again. And what I've seen so far this season, he's not great, is he? And he doesn't offer very much. Against Coventry, with all due respect, this is a guy who's played in, internationally for Germany and just looked so out of. He was made to look better by some young Coventry players.
There was.
Did he mention the Werner signing or not? Did it mention anything about it in the forum? No.
They wouldn't dare mention the Werner signing.
It's not, I think.
No. The other bit that did come up is it was a question around loans. We took the likes of Elfie Devine, Jamie Donnelly, away to the tour early in the summer pre-season. And the question was around, you want them to play the Tottenham way. Why didn't you just keep them to train with the squad? And and Ange came back and said, at the end of the day, these are Tottenham players. And we want to have an academy, the likes of Harry Kane, how they come through the academy. He just felt that they would have been better off playing more regular football in order to make them Tottenham players. And there was a bit of a question back to go, no disrespect to Leyton Orient. Leyton Orient aren't playing the we play. So what is Jamie Donnelly gaining from that? And Ange again said, it's minutes. I'll happily have them training with me every single day. But they are good players, but they just wouldn't have got enough minutes. So, he elaborated a bit more on the point around the loan, what that looks like. Talked about Mikey Moore and Will Lancashire, who are part of the squad, who they've got really high hopes from. And I guess what they showed in pre-season and early this season, they've got a part to play this season.
Yeah, so did he expand on anything to do with Lancashire and Mikey Moore? Because it's interesting what he says about the likes of Jamie Donnelly need to go out and get consistent minutes, who Jamie Donnelly was the best player in the under-21s last season, got player of the PL2, where Mikey Moore had minutes in the under-18s and he was obviously brilliant there. Will Lancashire was top goal scorer for the under-21s in the PL2. So did he mention what the differences are between maybe a Will Lancashire, Mikey Moore and a Jamie Donnelly?
Not as such, Ben. He just mentioned, I guess, that those two he felt would be better off going on loan, and Mikey Moore and Will Lancashire, who's obviously got an injury at the moment, they would benefit from being with the squad. I guess maybe he sees the gap, in strikers with Richarlison being injured and Solanke new. Will Lancashire's, I guess, that backup. I think Mikey Moore, is just a very good young player who I think can add something to our squad.
Yeah. What about Sonny? Did Sonny have much of an impact? The clip that's going around, obviously, a young fan, I think, asked him who his favourite Tottenham player is, and he said Ben Davies. But apart from that, was there much input from Sonny?
So that one was, I didn't get that one. I was like, Ben Davies, wow, did not see that one coming. I was assumed he would go Harry Kane, but I guess there was the joke going around, wasn't there, that when Bale was there, Roden, and there was all the Welsh crew, he was part of that. I guess that's where they came. He was part of that. But yeah, Sonny spoke, as he always does, really well. The bit that I was really intrigued is he talked about the final third, and he's talked about not the lack, but the fact that we're playing really well, but it's that thing where that final ball, we all know that scoring goal or a goal is the hardest part of the game. And we are so close to that final piece. And we're working really hard in training, and we're seeing in games, and how he did at Brentford in the first few games of the season, if we can just keep training and just make the right decisions at the right times, those final third moments will turn into goals, which ultimately will turn into 3 points. So he spoke a lot about that. He talked about the leadership. He talked a lot around how they need to be as leaders, I guess, leading towards the Brennan Johnson thing and how they all came together. There was a question, I don't know if it's come up between last night and this morning, was a fan asked, will you be at Spurs for the rest of your career? And the room kind of went, ooh, because it's a hard one to ask in front of the manager, in front of the boss. And as always, you've got to be quite diplomatic. And he turned around and said, been here 10 years. I love this club. And he does. You could see how much he loves the club. I want to win here. As always, football, who knows what happens in football? And I guess it's a hard question to get him to answer, but I think you can see how desperate he is to win a trophy with this club. And he's such an amazing guy. And that's the first time I've had the opportunity to sit and listen to him, how he speaks, how he behaves. You know, he is a captain. He's captain of this club, captain of his country, and he's a leader. And he's so desperate to do well for this club. And I think the love in that room for him was just amazing.
Yeah. Did he mention anything about his current position, you know, playing on the left and stuff like that, and whether he prefers that up front or anything to that effect?
No, nothing like that. He just spoke around ultimately the team and, you know, how hard everyone's working, but nothing as specific as that.
Fair enough.
And finally, you mentioned that Beth England spoke very well and gave some really good comments. I mean, there's been nothing publicised of what she said, so anything you can tell us would be completely new.
So Beth talked around, obviously, you know, being really proud to be at Spurs, being you know, part of the club. I think she also talked about, you know, them getting to the FA Cup final last season, what that meant, and obviously, you know, there was disappointment, but they felt, you know, the same as the manager, they felt how proud and the pride. There was a question around, I think this went to Daniel, was around getting some of our rivals in the women's game are having a lot more games at their home stadiums, you know, if not all of them. Is that something we will look at? And Daniel came out and said, yes, we will. You know, we want to do more, but from a stadium point of view, there's no point having 15,000, you know, for a women's game, you know, in a 60,000 stadium. So there was a bit around how do we continue to grow? How do we get more and more families and more people into the women's game, which is growing? I know the club's doing a lot. Again, Beth just talked about the relationship that she's got, how proud she is, you know, to be at this football club as captain, and how, you know, they work really well. You know, both. Is his name Robert?
Robert Wilhelm.
Yeah. Again, Robert's worked really well. You know, him and Ange speak. So there's clearly a lot of collaborativity in terms of how they are and how they're working, you know, as a men's and women's team, and, you know, almost one club. But I just found she spoke really well and she came across really well, and she's really proud to be at this football club and wants to keep growing the women's game and see where the women's team can go this season.
So, go on.
I was trying to say, you mentioned, because you were talking about Lange, you said he mentioned some stuff about how, you know, the squad and the makeup. Did he mention anything about anything different they're doing since he's come in, recruitment-wise, or anything specific? Did he go into any specifics, Johan Lange, or was it just about the squad mainly?
Yeah, it was mainly about the change in the squad. Obviously, he got that question about now the transfer window's closed, what do you do? Because obviously we assume he just, you know, he relaxes till Christmas, doesn't he? But he talked about there's a lot behind the scenes. You know, him and Ange. I think the bit that he talked about as well was when he talked about some of those loan players. A lot of what he's doing as well, and part of his team, is they are seeing and watching a lot of those games, and they're very involved in what's going on with the players on loan, so they still feel part of the club as opposed to being loaned at a club in Europe. But he just talked about the strategy, and, you know, him and Andrew are really aligned. They're happy with the transfer window. And again, you know, they'll continue to work to make sure everyone's aligned.
I actually believe he actually mentioned as well about he wants to increase the investment in the academy. And that's quite interesting, right? So do we think going forward that the aim will be to bring in a lot more players through the academy rather than signing players?
I think that's always been the aim, really.
Well, it hasn't been shown to be.
Hasn't been shown to be, but I think ideally that's always been like what Daniel Levy
but if he's
is
increasing
like.
investment, do we think that's, will lead to better results?
Well, let's hope so. I think like we saw that Spurs put a hefty amount into the academy a number of years ago, and I think we're only starting to bear the fruits of that now in the past like 3 or 4 years, whenever these players started to come through the under 18s and the under 21s, and you're seeing a lot of talent coming through the academy at the moment. So I guess the more money you plough in, you think the more players would come through.
Yeah, you look at the top of the league right now, you got Foden playing for City, Rico Lewis, you've
Saka,
got
Arsenal.
Saka for Arsenal, so I think it's definitely worthwhile.
And on top of that, you look at the players that Arsenal have sold this summer with Reece Nelson and Emil Smith-Rowe, and they've made a lot of money through their
City,
academy.
Yeah. Delap and Palmer, they make a lot of money from their academy as well.
Yeah.
So that's something we should definitely, I think Levy's good to do that, invest in that.
So Jared, by the time, obviously it's been a frustrating start to the season. 4 games, 1 win, and then we got the win against Brentford, and obviously a sloppy performance against Coventry, but ultimately we did get the job done. So there must have been fans that are fairly frustrated that were going into the fans forum. Do you think it was a much more, after hearing Ange speak, Levy, Sonny, do you think a lot of fans, including yourself, came away with it looking forward and a bit more positive for the rest of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I went in there with is anyone going to ask that question again? It's not quite going as it should, but not that you didn't get the opportunity. That there was confidence, I felt, and I didn't speak to everyone that was there. There was a confidence that we are on the right track. We've got the right man at the helm. The players, that they all know what they need to be doing. Yes, it's a results game. I get that, and I guess I came away going, let's just be a bit patient. And I'm not patient when it comes to Spurs, because I've seen not, in 43 years, not a huge amount of, 2 trophies ultimately. So I guess, but I did come away going, okay, I'm gonna let Ange do his thing and maybe be a little bit less critical of him, because we all are. We're fans. It's our club. We love it. We all have our opinions, and me more than anyone. But I have come away going, I get it. I get what you say. I get what you want to do. I like what you want to do. Okay, I'm going to let you do it. I might feel different in 6 months. But
yeah, you might feel different at the end of Sunday as well, to be fair.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. We don't get anything up at United, but hey, who knows?
Yeah, 2 hard games in a row now in terms of the league. United away, Brighton away. I think over the space of those 2 games last season, we got 1 point, didn't we? We drew 2-2 at United last year, and we got absolutely battered by Brighton last season. So how many points are you hoping for over the next 2 Premier League games?
Hit and miss. I think it almost depends what United turn up. I think if we can turn up how we did against Brentford, I don't think it matters which United turns up. I think we can go. And I think Brighton away, I almost think Brighton away is more difficult, if I'm honest.
Absolutely.
So I think if we can get 4 points out of the next 2, I think that's okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. And look, we'll see how it goes. But I want to thank you, Jared, for coming on and giving us all the insight into the ongoings of the fan forum last night. You did mention, at the beginning of the show that you thought it was, you still stand by that. That was a genuine fan forum. It wasn't scripted in any way, because there's a lot of narrative around this fan forum, particularly by certain sections of the fan base, that, these things are totally scripted. And I'm not sure what I'm led to believe, because I've never been to one. So you're certain that it was definitely unscripted and very genuine fan forum.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, there was questions that were put in before. They were asked by the presenter, and then it was opened up. If it was, then they did a very good job at disguising it, because I didn't see that. But I sat there as a fan going, okay, it's nice to listen to the leaders of my football club. Let's get behind it. Let's come together and let's see what we can do, because it's not worked up till now. So let's try something different.
All right, Jared, thank you so much. It's been really helpful and to see what happened last night, and I'm really glad to hear that you think it was it was genuine, a genuine fans forum. So I'd like to thank you for coming on today, and hopefully we'll speak soon.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me. Stay well. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, Jared.